Hello, podcast family. I figured I would just chat with you guys for a second before today's episode because I've just been reflecting a lot on the podcast lately and how much I'm really starting to just deeply enjoy this season and how it's growing and evolving in real time as I get a chance to talk to these incredible people and share them with you. I'll be honest, when I started season 5, I was not prepared. I didn't feel ready on a spiritual level. I didn't feel ready on like a human capacity level. I was jumping into doing it on my own for the first time, like I told you guys. And I knew that I had to do that because I knew that the podcast was asking to become something different. It kind of like needed a new life and it wanted to move into a different form. And I think that's the thing that's really fascinating about projects. Like projects have their own living, breathing energy. They are kind of like their own entities in a way. And sometimes a project, whether it's an art piece, a book that you're writing, whatever it is that you're working on, sometimes it asks you if you could help it to become something different, if you could kind of facilitate its birth of a new iteration. And you can feel when it's time. I feel like that with my business in general, Organic Olivia, my tinctures. It's also asking me for a bit of a different iteration. And I didn't know what that was going to look like. And that's the hardest part of jumping into anything that you have to do in life before you feel ready, which is the reality of most situations and how we grow as humans. You just don't know what it's going to look like. You feel like you're walking into the unknown, but you know that you have to walk anyway. And, I flew to California early this year in February and just reached out to a bunch of people and booked all these random studios and started doing all this on my own. I went headfirst in. I wasn't necessarily feeling as connected or even enjoying it in like a spiritual way in the beginning. I was loving the science piece of it, and we had some really special guests on, like Zach Bush, that started to ignite that fire in me of like, oh my God, this is what the show wants to be. It wants to go in this direction. I realized that jumping in head first and having conversations with these people was the medicine. That was actually the thing that I needed to do. I needed to rip the Band-Aid off and go in a little blind, go in pretty disconnected from myself and my why and my purpose behind this, or like what it wanted to become. And that actually it would be revealed through these incredible people on the show, reflecting back to me what my like core philosophy actually is these days. Because sometimes it's hard when you're just changing so much and you're getting to know yourself again, time and time again, as we have to do as humans. You're re-meeting yourself. It's hard to do that alone in a silo, sitting at a desk, whipping a journal out like, let's see what comes through. Obviously that's important and that's where a lot of insights happen, but sometimes being alone in that, you don't have that catalyst, that human connection, that inspiration, that thing that other people can ignite in you and mirror in you and activate in you through their wisdom to show you where you're supposed to go or who you are now. With every conversation, especially the conversations like today's episode, where we really go into the root of what's happening on planet Earth today. We're not at a shortage of information. We're not at a shortage of supplements. We're not at a shortage of a lot of things. Like we have so much. We kind of know what we need to do for our health, but what we are at a shortage of is connection with one another and connection to ourselves. And I think that is like our real wounding that we need to walk each other through to find a deeper level of like planetary health at this point in time. As I talked to Sah in this conversation today, as I've talked to so many of the guests who choose to look at the world in this like spiritual connection-based, we need each other based way, I'm starting to see that is really what I want to work towards. And again, what I want to highlight on the show and what I want to keep talking about. And it's just beautiful how that continues to evolve. And I continue to be able to even share in my own way through these conversations, my upcoming philosophy that is starting to develop and blossom through the show with you guys. And it's so nice to hear our guests' perspective on this as well. And it's so nice to get their wisdom and have these conversations that actually feel real. And this conversation is a reflection of that. This conversation is the perfect sort of encompassing of where this show is going to go. So I like that it's kind of happening mid-season. All of that to say that today's conversation is, I think, one that I didn't know how much I needed. It's a conversation that I think will hit you right in your heart. We're talking about loneliness and the power of community and how we can shift our perspective from trading our time for currency or tangible things, or like the money that will get us that next outfit or that next drunk vacation, etc. And instead looking at how can we really zoom out and go big picture and look at our time in terms of how we can utilize that thoughtfully to connect with those core people in our lives that are going to be there when things hit the fan, that are going to be there when a parent dies, that are going to be there when tragedy strikes. It's this whole conversation about shifting away from this more individualistic, hyper-capitalistic world that we've fallen into in the West, where we've gained freedom in certain ways. Nothing is ever all bad, but we've also lost a lot of what's actually important in life and like the power of just slowing down and being, because we're so obsessed with doing and productivity. We talk a lot about psychology in this episode. We talk a lot about relationship dynamics, because at the end of the day, we can say, yeah, we need each other, but needing each other and actually really like repairing the relationships in our lives and going deep with each other and getting closer with family requires a lot of messy stuff, requires like skills and conversations like this around how conflict is okay, how to approach conflict in this curious, open way. We touch on this point where, our younger generation, myself included in that, we're becoming more empowered and informed about unhealthy family dynamics, right? We have language for that now, thanks to pop psychology. You look at the holistic psychologists, and a lot of the posts are like, it's okay to cut your family off if it's preserving your peace. And, every situation is different. I'm sure for many folks that has to be the case, but Sah makes this really beautiful case today for what if that's not the ultimate case? What if we absolutely need breaks and time away from the folks who initially wounded us? But what if the point of separating and elevating and healing during those times where we take space is actually serving to make us stronger and increase our capacity so that we can go back to the family, so that we can go back to the wounded relationships, and we can show up as that version of ourselves that can engage in relationship differently and break the cycle? He says what's broken relationally can only be healed in community. And I think in the West, again, in like wellness culture, pop psychology culture, we're all trying to heal alone. We're all trying to like heal alone in meditation, or I can just self-care my way and do more face masks alone in my room or whatever. And maybe we actually need to like be going towards each other again in this way that is really difficult. So how do we just accept that and move forward knowing that it's going to come with both sides? We also talk a lot about death. That was really super cathartic for me to just be able to talk about it so bluntly and blatantly. I love the way that he speaks. We're talking about death more on this podcast too, which I think is very important. I think that the more we shy away from topics like death, the more that we shy away from the reality of life and the nature of life, and the more that we shy away from our own nature. So it was really important for us to have this very frank conversation about how to support people through grieving. Sah is actually a hospital chaplain, and he sits with people in hospitals as they die, as they pass and cross over. And that has helped to build his capacity to sit with the most uncomfortable thing in the world and offer someone the only thing he can give them, which is his presence. And I think that is a big answer for a lot of the things we're dealing with in today's world. Just building that presence and just seeing other people and knowing that that is a gift. I'm so grateful to Sah. And he just wrote this amazing book, Spiritually We. And I love him. And I hope you love this conversation. And thank you for being with me along this ride on the podcast as it continues to evolve and as these conversations get more connected, and as I figure out who I'm supposed to be talking to and what the intention is of each episode. Another thing I'm so grateful for is that this podcast has given me a space to practice being in relationship with people, to practice really listening and really being, and practice not listening to answer or being so much in my ego with other humans. I think it has helped me so much to learn how to actually connect with people. And it is such a rare opportunity to develop certain skills as a human being. And I'm really, really, really grateful for it. And it's just been so enlightening and fun and also hard and all the things to make this season so far. And the fact that you guys tune in each week and give this whole show a reason is just so special. So thank you again for listening and for being here for the birth of what's next. And let's get into the episode. Okay, are you ready?
We feel each other's emotions.
It's everything. It's living my life intentionally.
That's the message, right?
Absolutely. There's no difference between our mental health and our physical health. It's the same exact thing.
And without further ado, let's get juicy. I'm really excited to chat because this is my favorite topic in the whole world.
Really? Friendship?
Relationship.
Relating, okay.
Just, yes, relating.
Yeah.
Like relational health, how our relationships with others are based on this core foundation of our relationships with ourselves, and how most of us just don't even go there. And, I'm a bit disillusioned by the health and wellness industry because it's so much of like, look outside of yourself and do this thing and take this thing and all this stuff. And I think even just the communities are getting tired of it. Like, yeah, I'm getting the sun in my eyes in the morning. I'm taking the vitamin D, and yet I'm still coming up short. Where else can I go? And the only place is in here.
Yeah. And then once you go in there, then test what you've learned in there in relating. That's the foundation of the book.
That's what I love that you keep saying. It's like you got to test your material.
Test your material, girl.
So I've been
Yes,
researching.
It's exactly, yeah.
To that point, everyone that comes on the show has some kind of like a secret weapon to share with us, or like the secret to healing. For some, it's, metabolic health is the key missing piece, or, eating more fiber or boosting our microbiome. How did you come to figuring out that this key missing piece is actually the antidote to loneliness?
When we look at research, we know, according to scientific evidence, that belonging, to have connection, to have friendship is a biological, psychological, and spiritual need. And we can look at it the same way that we treat food and water and sunshine and rest. These are biological needs that we tend to regularly, or at least we try to. I think most people feel tired, they drink a cup of coffee, but the truth is they know they should be taking a nap or sleeping a little bit more. But we do it to a certain degree. We learn the cues of the body, right? Okay, I'm hungry. I'm going to order some food. I'm going to go to the cafe. But when it comes to the need for friendship, the need for connection, we don't treat it as a need, because to need connection, to need a friend in today's agenda, in today's atmosphere, is disgusting. It's, you're so needy. You can't do anything by yourself. You're not self-reliant. And these are all toxic labels to address a physiological, psychological, spiritual need that is the baseline of a happy, sustainable life. We can't do the human gig by ourselves. We just can't. It takes a village. And the truth is, if you look at more esoteric, more spiritual understanding to this, we don't exist independently. We just don't. And nothing in this world is self-made. Nothing comes to be by itself from its own side, independently of everything else. And how come we have given into this mindset and this idea and this belief that we can exist independently, that I'm self-made, I'm self-reliant, and that self-reliant toxic approach to life is leading to a loneliness epidemic, And then we can look at a little bit of data. 60% of young adults in America share that they are seriously lonely. 60% of young adults in America. That's mind-blowing, And then 2 out of every 5 people in America, including young, old, all, it's just overall population research, shows that 2 out of every 5 people share that their relationships are not meaningful. Oh my God. So you're around people, but you feel devoid. You're around friends and you have friends, but you just feel like, depleted. And I think this is the case for a lot of people. And then we go a couple more steps into this data, which I find so mind-blowing, also deeply heartbreaking, is that suicide rates have gone up by 30% in the last few years. That's like, dude, That's insane.
It's a crisis.
It's a crisis. It's a crisis.
Yeah.
Name it what it is. And then the last part, which is not a statistic that I add in a book, because my work as and training as a chaplain in a hospital only started last summer. But caring for the sick and dying at a hospital here in Los Angeles, I have seen that the elderly population enters an extremely traumatic experience, which is being hospitalized alone. The data says from last year that 40% of the elderly population doesn't have social support. That data is too conservative. That data is not looking at what's actually happening in the hospital. Me being in there, caring for the sick and dying, talking to social workers, talking to case managers, and asking that question: how many people of the elderly population, what's the percentage, have no one when they enter the hospital? They say, you know what, Sah, we're looking at more like 60 to 70%. Like, we are missing the plot. Friendship is not only for the good times, but to me, in my case, friendship is there for when shit hits the fan. When your mother died, and which is just happened to me about a year and 3 months ago, where my friend actually flew from Miami to Brazil on the drop of a hat. I said, my mom died. Can you be here tomorrow for the funeral? No problem. I'm there. People think that's a rare thing, but it's not. These are friendships these are the kinds of connections that we have to establish. That is the foundation of a sustainable, happy life. Look at the blue zones, right? The centenarians, people who live the longest in their life across the world. There's 4 or 5 main areas in the planet. And one of their pillars for longevity is friendship. Yeah. But in the capitalistic agenda of self-reliancy, being independent, produce over connect, do over be, all the stuff, it's showing us that connecting with someone in deep, long term isn't the norm, and that's not what you should prioritize. The gig is rigged, and we got to do something about it. That's why the book is a plea to like, yo, you can drink all the green juice. You can eat all the healthy food. You can do all the yoga. You can do all the meditating. You can do all the dancing. You can do all the cute, holy things. And I was that person too. I did all the holy things and looked really holy from the outside because I had my long hair, really skinny, wore white clothes, talked very subtle like this. So from the outside in, you thought I had the gig under. I was like doing the thing. But underneath, I was lonely and really not understanding that the foundation of the spiritual path, the foundation of the transformational path is community. You can't embody realization from only your side alone. Realization has to happen in the context of the other. So I'll drop that there.
There's just so many important points to unpack here. And what I'm hearing from you is that we have this innate need to be in relationship. We have this deep desire to connect. And I think that many of us at this point in time simply don't know how. We're afraid of it, and we're becoming more and more afraid of the things that deep, intimate relationships ask of us, such as being honest, engaging in conflict, riding out the highs and the lows. And so when you even mention the statistic around the elderly and how our parents are now entering really difficult end-of-life phases without our support, without social support, I think a little bit about the role of pop psychology here. And maybe you could walk with me on this.
Oh my God,
picture
you're
speaking
my language, honey. This is so good. Yes, go off.
So I think it's a pendulum swinging, okay? Yeah. I think it's that there's a pro and a con to everything. There's a huge con to the individualistic culture in the West that's related to capitalism, which is that we're now hyper-independent, hyper-disconnected. But there's also a con to the more collectivist cultures of outside of the West, where everyone has to really deeply rely on one another, because I think that can create room for some unhealthy dynamics to be born, right? Some kind of like enmeshed dynamics. And so I think our generation came along. All of a sudden, we have all this information on the internet. All of a sudden, we have pop psychology. And pop psychology is telling us that these family dynamics are traumatizing us and that everyone's a narcissist and both of our parents are narcissists and we need to go no contact and we need to disengage from the family.
You're blowing my mind. God bless you. The goddess protect you, Olivia. Keep going.
And so I see it as we've gone too far there. maybe there are some unhealthy dynamics in our families that we're recognizing. Maybe there's room to explore those, but it doesn't mean we need to full on disengage and shy away from that opportunity for reconnection through conflict. So how do you see this playing a role, and why is it important to go towards the conflict and wounding in our family versus just leave it behind because it's broken?
Oh my God. Thank you. First of all, thank you for, you get me at a heart level, and that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for that. I want to say something too, that it's important based on what you shared too. Personal development is necessary. So removing yourself from family dynamics and experiences that are exacerbating and tickling the wound and keeping you stuck and keeping you in a perpetual state of anxiety or depression. So taking time away from the people, place, and experiences that cause that call this wound forward constantly is important. But the line that we have to draw in a sense is that taking care of your wounds by yourself alone has to lead you to bringing what you've learned by yourself into the community, back with the family, back with mom, back with dad. So personal development, taking care of me, my needs, my life, my trauma, my story. Now, spirituality, it always drives you towards the collective, always drives you back to mom, back to dad. And in the world of today, I love that you mentioned this, because the narcissistic languaging and the toxic language, and I went no contact, I hear this on a regular basis. And look, I had to take 2.5 years away from being in direct contact with my Italian mother and my Lebanese father. But I went right back. After 2.5 years, because I was able to realize that so much of how I had interpreted their behavior was through my own misguided, unhealed mind. And perhaps the unhealing, perhaps the hurt parts of me happen in relationship to them. But hey, the responsibility to tend to my mind is mine, you know? And there's a quote that shares, it's like common knowledge in the sort of psychosomatic spiritual space. What's broken in relationship has to be healed in community, has to be healed in relationships. So you thinking that you can reach liberation or enlightenment or freedom or peace, let's just be simple, peace or happiness by yourself, it's a flawed lie, because you must check in with yourself. Okay, cool. I feel more peaceful. I feel like I forgave myself this morning in my meditation cushion. Oh my God, I've let go of the burden, feeling like I'm a bad person because I made those mistakes. Beautiful. Great. Now, are you offering that to mom? Are you offering that to dad? Are you offering that to your friend who made a mistake? No, our society says mistake is the person at the base of their being. We don't disentangle behavior from self. We have this very limited perspective, which keeps us trapped, isolated, hurting other people. The spiritual view is always understand there's multiple perspectives taking place. Your perspective is real and valid. My perspective is real and valid. But there's something else that you and I may not even be in contact with. And the book I write about it being the third truth, which is this spiritual perspective that not only benefits you, benefits me, but benefits everybody. There is always that third truth, that perspective into every connection. The thing is, are you willing to test your material? That's the biggest question that we have to do. If we are in this psycho-spiritual somatic revolution, we must engage as warriors, which calls you back into the battlefield, back into not protecting your peace. How many posts we see on social media, protecting my peace? You know, I'm in my villain era. All that stuff, it's centering you as the most special person in the world, keeping you away from understanding that the juice, the nectar is in community, you know?
Yeah. Did you really learn to self-regulate if that regulation only exists in the perfect conditions on your meditation mat and does not also, you can't also hold that once you're in a triggering situation in relationship in the real world?
Girl, you're blowing my mind. Oh my God, I'm so excited. This is so great, because this is exactly what I constantly urge my students and people in the community about. It's like, you have to see if your peace is sustainable and embodied. And it only happens when you get in an elevator with that awkward neighbor that you try to avoid constantly.
Yes.
Can you lift up your gaze and say, hello, good morning? Can you breathe deeply into your body? Can you feel your feelings in the moment where you're exchanging a relationship with someone who calls forth unpleasant feelings in you? Can your meditation practice carry you through the day? Can your meditation practice happen when you're relating to your boss, or to Susie who sits next to you, or to Sally who is at the manager at the coffee shop that always plays awful music? There's endless ways for us to test our material.
Yeah.
But we are constantly unintentionally and unconsciously holding back from the opportunity to have these realizations become who we are,
And the nature of relationship is that our closest relationships will always be the ones that get the stickiest and can be the most triggering. And those are the doors where we may open to find the truest and deepest work. And so it makes sense in a culture that is relationally unwell that we would want to avoid those relationships the most and just kind of close the door on them and say, well, that person screwed up and they screwed me up, so I need to go heal away from them and I can never engage with them again. Mm-hmm. But like you said, the way that you actually learn how to put that healing that you do in private into true practice and solidify it as part of you, really integrate it, is by re-engaging with those people who may not have actually done their own work, because that's okay. That's their path. Mm-hmm. And being able to hold the new version of you even in relationship with them, mm-hmm. even when they're being a mirror to you and holding up things that you don't want to see. Mm-hmm. There's a book called The Courage to Be Disliked that talks a lot about this, how when relationships are more surface or have more natural boundaries built into them, like our colleagues or, acquaintances versus our friends, best friends, and family. Mm-hmm. The friend, best friend, family, those are the relationships where lines get more blurred, right? Where we tend to take on each other's tasks when there's more room for enmeshment and resentment because maybe one person's trying to fix the other, or we were just so close that we became wounded easily by the other. Mm-hmm. And yet those are the relationships where we have the deepest potential for intimacy and for healing. And so I think about, dynamics in my family and things I've been working on healing. There's a lot of, I'm from an Italian family too, mm-hmm. right? So you're half Italian.
You get it, honey.
There's a lot of Catholic guilt
and
enmeshment and codependency and let me fix that for you and there's like a lot of complaining kind of. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've experienced this
too.
As
a love language.
Yeah, it's like let's connect over complaining and talking about who died today and who, this horrible thing that happened. Mm-hmm. And did you hear a tree fell on this person? Like it's crazy the things that they'll connect over. So it's a lot of this like trauma bonding, and almost sometimes I would feel like my family like wanted something to almost be wrong so that they could have something to fix in me, or they could like bring that gossip to someone else in the family. So there's just a lot of these enmeshed dynamics. And I know that every culture can relate to that in a sense, mm-hmm. right? Again, that's part of coming from that collectivist culture where we were protected by town gossip in a way, because then everyone knew your business and could help you if you needed
mm-hmm.
it. So there's the duality. But then as I realized, okay, I don't want to participate in this dynamic of enmeshment. It has been hurtful to me in many ways. I took the time to disconnect from it, to do my healing around boundaries and codependency. And I'm now coming back to it. And my daily practice is giving those family members a call, is engaging them and showing up with my joy and positivity and holding fast to those boundaries that I've developed, even when they start to kind of poke and push. Mm-hmm. And I think that because you can't do someone else's work for them, you can't teach anybody anything they don't want to learn or make them hear something they don't want to hear. All you can do is be that example. And that is the deepest spiritual work of relationship.
Mm-hmm. First of all, epic. I'm like, yes, girl, we are like on the same boat, like literally drinking that same juice. But I think there's a fine line. I think sometimes people may let go of not even engage in humanitarian work and social justice or family dynamics out of the idea that if they are fully healed, if they do all the self-resolution work, if they do all the self-actualization work by themselves, their example, their presence will immediately invite other people to be seduced by their liberation, and therefore they will want to be free as well. That is true. I'm just offering a contradictory point here. And I believe that 100%. And this is how much I believe. When I am praying for a patient at the hospital or meditating with a patient at the hospital, someone who's maybe going through an oncology journey, or someone who's actively on their way out, right? Being moved to hospice, whatever it may be. Someone asked me, do you open your eyes to see if the patient is praying with you or if they're meditating with you? I said, no, because I believe that the more present I become, the more I can seduce them into their own presence, the more I can invite them non-verbally by changing the psychological and spiritual temperature of the room, because I'm so at home in my body. I'm so deeply here in the now. And we are addicted to presence. Presence is the greatest drug. Presence is I think it's the thing that draws us the most towards each other. It's towards people and experiences that bring us to the present moment, to bring us to that state of flow where we're just like at one with everything and everyone. So I say all of this. And then on the other side, don't stop there. There are opportunities for you to exist from that place of presence. And then also just like send them a book, like that, and drop off, some dark chocolate with a little less of the cracked sugar. There is a way of doing it. There's a way of inviting them to that restaurant where we can eat a salad first and not the fried calamari first. There are ways of like, hey, I'm taking a shot of vinegar before we start eating. That's so weird. You want to try it with me? Cool. There are ways. What the problem is that we are not at home with our own process and our own authenticity, that it doesn't translate well. It doesn't feel authentic to say, let's take a shot of vinegar before we eat the food or read this book, because perhaps we haven't actually done all the inner, we haven't looked at all the inner mechanics that takes for us to be radically authentic. And what I see is in authenticity is integrity. If you live with integrity, you will see how much your life changes. My lack of integrity looks like a cigarette and a Diet Coke. When I'm losing the plot, that's as far as I go.
Same.
That's as far as I go. It's a cigarette and a Diet Coke. I don't do drugs. I don't drink. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
literally.
Anymore.
Exactly. I'm coming up to 7 years, but that's as far as it gets. It's a Diet Coke and a cigarette. And I know that's my edge. That's my boundary. And I'm totally okay at home there. And I don't have to hide that from anybody, because every other area of my life, I'm in integrity. From morning to night. Everyone, I'm with a patient in the hospital, I'm still a sassy, loud, bold queen. If I'm in the homeless shelter, if I'm at an orphan center, if I'm at a Columbia University, if I'm right here with you, you're going to get the same wild creature at all the place. The expression of it may change a little bit, but that's what dictates your confidence in saying, how about this book, Mom? How about this chocolate?
It's your passion for your genuine love and passion for the work and for the practice. That it's the same way as when you're a CEO. It's your actual passion for the product that you're making, everything that you're doing, that gets your people on board as a leader, right? It's like your staff is not going to care if you don't actually care, and if you don't talk more about your passion than their directives. So it's the same thing leading a family, stepping into a role of leadership within a family dynamic or a friend dynamic. It's really being so passionate and sharing with excitement versus with expectation and attachment.
Ooh, say that again, because people need to hear that 5 times in a row.
Well, it's so true. It's very, especially early on in the path. I was like, well, I just feel so bad for my father, because he just is not going to change his ways, and he's just not going to eat healthy. So I need to really get him in line and expect him to do this and kind of put these pressures on him from this judgmental, ugly place within me, right? It just wasn't right. And I had so many people, beautiful spiritual teachers in my life, thankfully check me and say, isn't the thing that you don't like about him that he's judgmental? And now you're being Judge Judy over here? And now you're coming at him with a place of judgment? Maybe you guys aren't all that different. Maybe you need him in your life as your teacher and your mirror and your reminder of that piece of you. And that's why you can't look away from him. You can't just be like, I'm just going to dissociate from my parents, because you need those reminders. And with that in mind, maybe you need to approach your people, your parents, whoever it is, from this loving place instead of forcing and putting expectations. You can even say, maybe they're happier that way. Maybe it's better for their soul's path to not eat healthy or to not go into this spiritual work. Maybe that's not their soul's choice for this incarnation. However, because I'm so passionate about it, if I just share my joy around it, who knows what could happen? It's like the ultimate path to non-attachment is the path to relationship. And I want to say what you were speaking on earlier, it sounds to me like what you're saying is that to be a good steward of relationship means to be fully at home in your body first. What does that look like and why is that so important?
This is the biggest thing, because we go through our lives blaming the world for how we feel. We have been socialized and wired to place blame, right? And therefore, there's always a villain and there's always a victim, which then what does that do at the end of the day? Separates you, creates duality. So it's that simple, that when you feel at home in your body, when you feel deeply relaxed, I say 2 things have happened from 10 years of devoted spiritual practice. And it's to the day that we're recording this is when I entered my first 10-day silent retreat in India, 10 years ago to the day, which is like beautiful synchronicity as well. So I say that with 10 years of practice, what I've gained is 2 things: ability to communicate difficult things, and I feel deeply connected to people and experiences and strangers and even people that I don't like or that I don't feel connected to. Normally, that I wouldn't feel connected to, I do feel connected to at all. Not all the time. There are moments that I know that I'm in need of taking time away to feel reconnected, but that's one of the byproducts of all these years of work is I feel connected to people.
And I'm sure there's moments of like, oh yeah, maybe that's not my person.
Exactly.
But I can witness them and have compassion for them and their path.
And there's still a thread of humanity, because just like you and just like me, we have 2 things in common. They want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. And just to always like wire that back, to re-socialize that humanity back into our psyche, back into our hearts, back into our bodies, that just like me, they don't want to suffer, and just like me, they want to be happy. But you asked, what is you said that your question was, is presence the most important thing when it comes to relating?
Well, it's sort of, it just sounded to me like you need to cultivate a really strong relationship with yourself and presence in your own body and knowing of who you are to your core, this unshakable knowing of this is who I am, before you can really relate to others in a healthy way.
That's right.
And so what does that look like? How does that feel? How can people cultivate it?
There's a couple things to speak to that, Olivia, and that's such a great question too. First, when we are making that choice that I want to feel present and I want to deepen my relationship with my friends, my family, my best friends, the world, you're going to have to unplug from technology for a little while, because a lot of people are not in tune with their own feelings. A lot of people's definition of happiness is how quickly they can distract themselves from feeling, how quickly they can run away from the present moment. A lot of people have their entire days booked up back to back, and we see those people booked and busy as happy. But the truth is, if you're running away from feeling your need for connection, if you're running away from all the feelings that are bubbling up in your body, that's not happiness, that's avoidance. And you're going to do the thing that will lead you to a very unhappy death. Because the truth is, if we can arrive at the end of our lives with a smile on our face, knowing that, hey, I came and I did the thing. I was a good friend. I was a good partner. I helped where I could. I made the world a better place, even in small ways, right? That will grant you a happy death. Why? Because when we do unskillful things, when we don't show up, when we're not kind, what does our mind do? It replays that. So by default of the law of cause and effect, if you do a lot of positive, good things, helpful, kind, friendly things, what's going to happen to your mind at the end of time? She's going to be fine. You're going to be relaxed. You're going to be at peace. So it's not a difficult equation. It's a simple equation, Okay, so now we have this kind of framework. Now let's go a little bit of a layer deeper. When you start to unplug, you're going to realize that there's a lot of unpleasant feelings. There's a lot of uncomfortable feelings coming up. Remember this, no feeling is too big that you can't feel, and feelings are not here to hurt you. And some of the stuff that you're feeling right now has this, it predates you, like some of the stuff predates you. And you can look at esoteric data, look at law of karma, or you can look at transgenerational trauma, look at scientific data or esoteric data. They both show that we come earthside with a backlog of stuff. I think a lot of people want to believe in this like innocence of a baby, of a child. And there is an innocent spirit. There is an innocent soul. There's an innocent, most subtle essence to people. So connecting to that is valid and true. However, there is all this other stuff that's muddled and entangled with that pure soul. And a lot of the ways that we relate to people, place, and experience are the ways that mommy and daddy, grandma and grandpa have related to, or previous versions of you if you hold an esoteric view. And checking in, are the ways that I'm relating to the present moment, is my emotional response matching the context of reality? Because mental health to me is, something sad happens, I feel sad. Something happy happens, I feel happy. A lot of times we're overreacting or underreacting. We either shut down or we rage out. This pendulum swing, to use your language, this 0 to 100 over everything, that shows you that there is something inside of your biography, inside of your story that you haven't tended to, that you haven't loved. And let's use a mantra from AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, that says what's hysterical, it's historical. So if you are hysterical, and I say this with grace, right? And I write about this in the book too. The word hysteria has a lot of negative connotation, but for the sake of our conversation, for the sake of the material in this book, it's really important to see when we are in this overreaction or underreaction, that it's pointing to something that is historical, that the present moment isn't the reason why you feel the way you feel and you're acting the way you are acting. It's stuff that you got to tend to. So if you want to learn how to better relate, got to do that work.
The only way to even see what stuff is there, what stuff is bogging up your reactions to others, is to spend the time with yourself and to spend the time with yourself in the uncomfortable emotions. I think that the essence of what I call codependency and what I often talk about in the lens of codependency is relating to others for the sake of escaping oneself.
Ooh.
And not being in relationship with others for the sake of I see you and want to relate to you.
And gardening each other's heart.
Yes.
And weeding each other's weeds and tending to each other's, flowers and fruits and beautiful parts of our garden, like really adopting a spiritual gardening capacity to point to the weeds and point to the harvest, actually working in that way for each other. Because that's what friends are for. It's developing our liberation together.
Yeah. My greatest friends who really propel me are the ones who say, that sounds like a story that you're telling yourself. That doesn't sound like you're acting in integrity with yourself. Hey, and they're deeply honest with me, like you said, the weeds. And then they're also like, hey, wait, you can do this. I need to go see you go do this. I need to see you try this. I'm holding this vision for you. Why don't you try that? Like they're constantly big upping me, right? It's a really beautiful duality, and it comes from this place of honesty. And what I heard you say earlier is that the more you can actually be with yourself, be very, very present in your body and feel safe in your own body and your own truth, the more you have capacity for sharing truth with others, which may sometimes result in conflict. So I want to talk about the importance of conflict in healthy relationships. We're very sensitive these days, and I think a lot of us are very afraid of conflict in relationships, and so we stop there and we don't go deeper. Why is conflict important in relationships? How can we feel and cultivate our own sense of safety when we're about to engage in something that could create conflict? And why is it the way through?
Thank you. Such a beautiful question. There is a chapter in the book called Conflict is for Lovers for a reason. Conflict is a way for us to deepen our connection. Conflict is a way for us to get to know each other's inner worlds. Conflict is a way for me to know how you feel, then that leads you to how you think, and then that leads you to how you act. Oftentimes, we are not inviting each other into our inner, utmost secret parts, right? Olivia, when you do this, I feel this feeling. And when I feel this feeling, I think these stories. And when I think these stories, I act in these ways. And the action that perhaps the feeling that let's say you left me on red, or you made plans and you didn't show up and you didn't even text me. And then I saw on your Instagram stories that you were out doing whatever. I feel abandoned. I feel rejected. And then the conversation would sound like this: Olivia, when you make plans with me and don't show up, I feel abandoned. And when I feel abandoned, what triggers for me are all my stories of abandonment. How my mom left me, how my boyfriend left me, how all these people left me, and now you are doing that. And then from that thinking process, there's a layer deeper, how I am unlovable, undeserving of relationship, and I just suck, and I really don't deserve to have friends, and I'm just a bad person. Okay, I'm thinking that. Now, the action that goes with it. So the feel, think, reaction, the feel, think, do is what we have to invite the people that we're in conflict into, which is so hard to be that honest, which is so hard to be that vulnerable, to say, when I feel this way, when I think these thoughts, I drink myself to sleep, or I eat myself to sleep, or I do whatever may be that's in the texture of self-destructive tendencies, which we all have. A lot of the times we self-medicate as our ways of auto-regulation are really self-destructive tendencies. So the baseline of conflict is first knowing that the way that they're acting is their approach, although may be discombobulated and unkind or a strategy that you don't agree with, but it's their way of meeting a need. And their needs are valid, right? So I speak about nonviolent communication in the book too, because it's the basis of nonviolent communication, how to communicate how I feel without blaming you for my inner world. With the foundation that, yes, we have empathetic resonance, but if a feeling visits my body that you're feeling and it sticks and it stays, what does that say about my inner world? Is that I still have all this anger, that I still have all this fear, that I still have all these depressive tendencies, that I still have all this guilt and all this shame to work on within myself. So approaching with it, feel, think, react, and know that as strange as what they're doing may look, as awful as what they're doing may look, they're just trying to meet a need. And when you think about it like that, it's like, okay, cool. That person is looking out for their survival. That person is looking out for a way for them to stay alive and well. And that's their approach to happiness. Does it match mine? No. But their needs are valid. Like that.
Yeah.
And it's hard, but this is foundation.
Yeah.
But having the conversations,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a big principle of nonviolent communication, and I'm sure you get into these principles, is ownership and personal responsibility. So even
Which is out the window these days.
Yeah, so even in your language, it's saying, it's putting half of the responsibility on them. When you do this, I'm not a fan of you doing this. I'm just bringing up a point of contention in our relationship. When you do this, it makes I feel, not it makes me.
Not even it makes. I feel.
When you do this, period. I feel this. So it's first of all taking the ownership with the language of I feel, and then it's also taking the ownership of, for me, it triggers my abandonment wound, and I know that wound is still mine to heal. It's showing me, thank you for this, because it's showing me that I still have this to work on, but I want to share with you that I do have this to work on. So when this happens, it contributes in a way for the spiraling of me internally. And so I just want to share this with you so that you can get to know more about me and my wounding. And it's not to make others feel like they need to walk on eggshells around us, but it's just to help others know us.
Help others know us, you named. There's so many times that I hear from students saying, I don't share this innermost fragile mechanic of how I feel, think, and react to even my partner or my therapist. I don't share that with anybody. You want me to do this even with my friends? Yes, because you want somebody that's going to come and help you when you have to go to chemotherapy. You want to be there for someone when you can't pick up your prescription medication and they have to do it. Someone else has to do it for you. You want to deepen friendship with people in such a way that they get you, that they understand the fragility of the season that you are in life. It only happens with this bond. It only happens when you say, hey, I feel this way when this happens. And guess what? This isn't what you're going to do with every person in your life.
Yeah, I was going to say, what if we bring it back to the family dynamic? I think that's where a lot of people are struggling.
This is it. It's your core friends and your family dynamics. Like, this is where you have to exercise that.
So in the context of the family dynamics, because I think a lot of people, we're in the culture of my parents traumatized me, right? And word, 100%. But at the same time, how can we apply these principles through nonviolent communication with our parents, perhaps, knowing that they might not actually be able to hold what we're saying, knowing that they might never get there, right? If I were to say to a parent, when you do XYZ, I feel this and I have this wounding and it would make me feel really good if you did this. Sometimes that parent's going to react defensively. Sometimes they're not going to even understand that kind of framework. They're not going to have the tools. So how do we show up?
But not even asking them for a change of behavior. invite them into the most vulnerable part of you and see what happens first. Don't even ask for a change of behavior, because when we show vulnerability, an honest vulnerability, an empowered vulnerability, watch a miracle happen right in front of your eyes. Your mother's lips will start to quiver. Her eyes will start to well up, because she didn't know that her behavior brought up these feelings. She didn't know that this behavior brought up these stories. She didn't know that this behavior had you drinking yourself to sleep. She didn't know, because she thought that you banging a door and leaving and not talking to her was you showing up that you're strong and that it's a big F you, Like, you never show that, hey, when I do these hard things, I act in these hurtful ways, it's my way of protecting myself, But first, just invite them in. Let them see what happens. Is like, let them understand your inner world, and then just watch what happens. Oftentimes, you're going to be like, oh, wow, they might just change in front of your eyes.
The micro is the macro. Everything is everything, right? Like, this concept can apply to so many things. And what you're bringing up for me right now is a dynamic that I was just working on in a work relationship, where there were two people in this work relationship, and one felt like the other was on top of them, kind of micromanaging and giving them directives versus trusting them to take the right action once an issue was raised. And my leadership advice to this person was, all you have to do is bring things to people's attention. You just bring up the wound, the area that needs fixing, or the area that could use some love and some work, and trust them to come up with their solution to the problem instead of telling them how to fix it. And this is exactly what you're saying to do in relationship.
Exactly.
Bring up the most vulnerable piece of you, put it on the table, say, hey, here is the wound, and trust them to respond with whatever action that their soul feels is necessary to meet you with more compassion thereafter.
Be surprised. Allow yourself the beauty of being surprised on the regular. Because what happens so often is the moment we get on the healing journey, on the spiritual path, or we're having in the sort of pop psychology world, we feel like we know better. And I know better because I'm healing, I'm healed, I've done this thing, I've gone on a retreat, I eat this way, We think that because we are doing it and it's working for us, so is everybody else, And if they don't follow that script that you wrote for them in your mind that they can't read, it only exists in your mind, if they veer off a little bit, and if they don't deliver their deliverables, exact outcome how you want them to deliver, they're off, they're cut out, So, and this also plays out so often in how we relate to everyone in our lives. We're constantly, unconsciously handing off these scripts to people in our lives. They can't read your mind. They are in their own improv acting experience just as you are, And why keep holding people hostage to your perspective of them? It's robbing your capacity to be in awe. And awe and wonder, surprise lights up the brain and the spirit in such a beautiful way. Activate that. Put it out there and let them surprise you. And you are going to surprise yourself, because when you can name how you feel, when you feel with that person that contributes to these feelings coming up, a miracle is going to happen, because you have unconsciously lived your whole life rejecting yourself, neglecting yourself from these feelings. When they come up, you immediately do something to neglect. You immediately run away from the experience. You immediately shut down, or you overreact instead of pausing, being like, oh, wow. These feelings in my belly. Wow, I feel a lot of tension in my belly. It's in my belly, my responsibility to tend to. And you're able to name when you feel, oh my God, you're gonna feel the miracle of feeling a feeling to the point that it passes.
What a gift it is to share with someone those moments when you're in pain in relation to them, because just by sharing, you give them the opportunity to not cause you pain, to fix it and to love you better. And to your point of I know better, this attitude that's very pervasive in the spiritual community when you've done some work, by even telling someone how you want to be loved or how to fix it when you feel triggered, you're telling them, I know better than you do on how you can love me. And it's their unique love, the way that they want to share it, that is so sacred. How can you know best in terms of how they're going to give it to you? You can only be surprised because it's something that only exists within them.
The fixer syndrome. We have the fixer syndrome, and I was a big one in my previous relationship. I thought I knew better how someone needed to do life, needed to do this, needed to do X, Y, and Z because I had popularity or I had success in this thing, and none of the external qualifications dictate none of the external value that you have dictates your qualification to care for someone's inner world. And we have to unsocialize that from our psyche. We equate someone's value, money, status, popularity, zip code, able-bodied, this, like we just label all the things that we deem as beautiful as someone's worth or someone's capacity or integrity or intelligence. If someone has all these things, that means that they're intelligent. That means that what they're saying is what this person needs. And look at the political space with these career politicians. Look at people who've gone to these Ivy League schools trying to help the poor, trying to help poor people, trying to help Black people, trying to help brown people, trying to help the queer community. It's like if you don't have a lived experience in this space, it's almost impossible for you to know how to care for these people. Now, circling back to the 101 relationship, it does take a lot of finessing. It takes a dance. So we have to learn how to regulate ourselves by ourselves. And I want to name this because I think a lot of people here feel your feelings. They don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
So I want to just say that in the book, I go into detail. When you feel a feeling, it's, if we strip away all the story around the feeling, it's a sensation in the body, that it happens in the body. So bring your attention to the place in the body where you feel the feeling. It may be a tugging at your belly. It may be a knot in your heart. It may be something in your throat, back of your neck, whatever. We have so many psychosomatic responses to how we think. Or to what's happening in the world. Bring your attention there, either with your mind's eye or with your hand. If you don't have the inner concentration to bring your mind's eye to that place, do it with your eyes open, but put your hand there. Oh, wow, the anger is here. Oh, wow, the grief is right here. Oh, the grief is here. Oh, the abandonment is right here. Oh, wow. Like, bring your hand there and then do your best effort to disentangle from the stories to why you feel the way you feel. Let go of all the stories that validate why you're feeling the way you're feeling and just experience the feeling for what it is, a passing sensation. What if that feeling that you're experiencing in the present moment wasn't a messenger of meaning, wasn't a messenger of the truth, wasn't a messenger of how you need to cut this person out of your life? What if that feeling at its most simple form was just here to call you back into your body? What if it was just here to call you back into a deep breath? What if it was just here to call you back into your body, to resource yourself by taking account and giving your mind the coordinates of your body? Oh, wow, here I am. What if the feeling was that? Start there and practice that long enough, and then you're going to be able to say, oh, this feeling is a messenger for this. But we've lost the plot. We think our feelings, we pathologize our feelings, we storify our feelings, we conceptualize our feelings, so much so that we're giving them way more power than they need to have.
It becomes more about the meaning of the feeling than it is about the feeling existing and just, being deserving of existing.
Girl, you're good. You're good.
Well, it only comes from years of screwing up. You know what I mean? Of years of screwing up in relationship and not being the best at being human, and intellectualizing my feelings. The other day, a friend, I was talking to her and I told her I had anxiety. And she's like, okay, cool. Yeah, you have anxiety right now. And that anxiety doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't mean that, oh, and then I shouldn't go to this podcast today because I have anxiety. So it must be an intuitive hit that this isn't right for me. She was like, it's just anxiety. So just feel it and just talk to it and just acknowledge it and then just go about your day because it means nothing. And that's where the spiritual journey can sometimes get us into trouble, because there's many times in our life where making meaning keeps us holding on, where making meaning brings us into a new chapter of ourselves and gives our trauma a greater meaning, right? If we can say, well, that had to happen because I had to see this thing. And now I can do XYZ from a place of compassion because that thing happened to me. Making meaning is really powerful when it comes to lowering the volume and the impact that our trauma has on our daily life today. But there's a point where reading into everything and making meaning out of everything can become a little obsessive and can be counterproductive.
Oh my God, you named it. This is so the highest high, and I think that there was a moment, and I was in Brooklyn, New York, when I was still living in New York. I was doing all the holy things. I was like meditating. I was vegan for 7.5 years, doing all the holy things. Everything I did was to distract myself from feeling. Meditating on my breath, and wonderful, meditating on a mantra, meditating as me being the deity, a guru yoga, visualizing myself as the Buddha, things that are really skillful and very benevolent and very good, and they have a consequence of peace.
Yeah.
However, underneath that was my fear of feeling the guilt, of feeling the shame. And every time they showed up, I would go into imposter syndrome and would not go out, would not engage, would then, overdo the Diet Coke, overdo the cigarettes, overdo porn, overdo plug in your poison, plug in your way of distracting, until one morning I said, I'm going to feel this guilt for what it is, a passing sensation in my body without evidence that I am a bad person. And I sat down. And I just lowered my gaze and I went inside, and the guilt was there. And the guilt muddled with the shame was at this place in my belly on the left side. And I just brought my attention there. And the moment I touched that part of my body with my mind's eye, the feeling started to change, started to move. And all of a sudden, it was almost like there was a creature alive inside of my body, started to move up and out. And it left through the back of my head. Not always happens. It feels very memorable and necessary as a story to tell, because it was the first time I actually felt my feelings as they were happening. How much of our lives, how much of our days we are not processing the present moment as it's happening.
Yeah.
We constantly put it to the back. How many times I've walked up to a nurse or someone in the medical staff at the hospital and say, hey, how's it going? Should we process what just happened in there? Oh, no, I don't do this at work. I'm do this in my own time at home. If we could just unburden that load in that moment right there, you wouldn't go home and drink a whole bottle of wine. You may have had only one glass. The problem is, because of how much we suppress our experience of the present moment, we then have this desperate need to numb ourselves, And just look at how many distractions we have. Look how many ways that we cope with reality. What it actually takes is naming the discomfort as you're feeling,
Our relationship with death is coming up for me a lot recently. So I want to go more there with you of the work you're doing as a hospital chaplain and all the things. But when you just gave that example of the nurse who perhaps a patient just died and she's standing in the hallway and you're saying, do you want to cry right now? You want to acknowledge this moment? Let's do it right here, right now together. Yeah. And she's like, nope, I put that in a box. I compartmentalize it. I have to do that. That seems to be a very pervasive attitude in all parts of the world. I can't just say the West, because I do feel like my Italian culture can be very repressed as well. But I think that where I'm connecting it to is that it sort of mirrors this discomfort that we have around death period and around like the darkness of life period, where not only do we not want to feel the grief in the moment as they come up because it would inconvenience our workday or it would make us look, quote, weak or whatever it is, but we also don't want to talk about death period and acknowledge it, and it's taboo and it's this thing that we can't touch, even to the point where when someone we love dies, when a close friend loses their closest person in life, we don't even know how to talk to them about it. We dance around it. Should I say that person's name? Should I not? Should I talk about them? Should I do everything to avoid it?
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. My condolences. And I just had this experience. My best friend, her brother died.
Oh,
it's
shit.
Horrible. It's the worst thing that can ever happen. It just sucks. And she taught me so much through her reflection of like the things that people were saying to her afterwards and how uncomfortable they were. And it was a lot about how they felt uncomfortable. Oh, I'm so sorry. And I can't imagine. And she's like, of course you can't imagine, but that's not helpful. And she just wanted people to sit in the boat of this sucks with her. She just wanted people to witness and be like, this is horrible. Let me sit next to you for a second.
Mm-hmm. Quiet.
There's no words.
Mm-hmm.
Quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Witnessing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we'd be more comfortable with the horror and reality of death if we knew how to just be quiet and revere it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is so profound. And I'm so sorry for your friend for losing
Thank you.
Her brother. That's awful. One of the worst parts of losing my mom was this period of hearing people say, I'm here for you, whatever you need. How about you don't say whatever you need and just send me a care package? How about you just go to Air One and get Olivia's peach juice? That shit helps, girl. How about you just buy that and handwrite a letter, a little note to say, here with you, feeling with you, by your side quietly, and put that in a little basket and drop it into my mailbox. Don't be sending a text message saying thoughts and prayer. Don't be doing the thing that will help you feel better. This is what it is. You are so uncomfortable with death. You're so afraid of grief, and you don't want to feel uncomfortable. You don't want to feel, so you make it all about you. How many times I receive messages from people that I thought were like emotionally intelligent, eloquent in the human gig, how this reality, this experience of being human is painful, period. The Buddha wasn't kidding when he said pain is inevitable, suffering is a choice. He wasn't being a nihilist. He was speaking the truth from someone who had observed the nature of reality. This gig is painful. Now, we can choose how we relate to that pain. But so many of us, when we feel the pain of another, when we're feeling with someone their pain, and the deepest pain, which is loss, the grief, we do everything we can to run away from the fact that we're feeling uncomfortable. And we think that by feeling their grief with them, we will then spiral. We will then, I've heard people say to me this, oh, you talk about death so often. You actually even say that you wake up in the morning, and I say these words when I wake up. I know that I may die today, and because of that, may I only do the things that benefit me, and may they have the greatest impact in the world. People say, oh, you're manifesting your death. No, my darling.
That's not how manifestation works.
Exactly. I'm actually coming into terms with our mortality, which then propels my integrity, which then keeps me in check, which then sets my spirit on fire, which then allows me to sit next to someone who's dead and hold their hand and pray next to that dead body for 2 hours without centering myself in that story. Like, come on. You don't have to be afraid of the grief. And then look at what is our greatest fear? Fear of death. You know, we're so afraid of what happens after. And I don't know. I've had to question all my beliefs too as a Buddhist. I've questioned all my beliefs. Did I want to believe the Buddhist doctrine that after 49 days, my mom has reincarnated again and she's back here already? You know, did I want that? Did I want to believe that? No, I was more into the Judeo-Christian belief that she's in heaven. And I'm still struggling with that. And then I talked to one of my Buddhist teachers and he said, no, she's in a heavenly realm, sort of like a heaven for Christians. And I said, great, thank you. At least she's resting, being taken care of, you know, but I don't truly know. What I do know is that our fear of death is keeping us stuck. It's keeping us lonely. It's keeping us from doing the things, keeping us from reaching out. It's keeping us from saying all the things, you know, we are neglecting life as a way of protecting ourselves from experiencing death. Does that make sense? It's like a mind fuck. Excuse my language.
It's all good. No, I think, well, first of all, thank you for sharing your experience with your mother dying with us. And I'm so sorry. And I would also love to ask you,
please,
what was the greatest lesson your mother taught you? What was the impact that she left on you?
Mm-hmm. Thanks for bringing that and that sweetness and your present eyes. I appreciate it. I say that her death itself hasn't brought any blessings. I don't have a mom. Like, it's just, I have to go through the human gig without a mom. That's just awful, you know? Yeah. Like, my mom was my best friend. She was there for the good, the bad, the happy, the sad, all of it. So her death itself, the event, has no blessing in it. It is awful. However, what I'm learning through my relationship to her death is strength, courage, and also empathy in a whole new way that I didn't even think was possible. I never thought I could experience such a deep, suffocating pain before. I thought that my traumas from my teenage years, from my early 20s, the reckless life, the ways I related to people, the ways other people related to me, I thought that healing all that, facing all that was already hard enough. But I didn't realize that my heart could crack to such a degree that life felt meaningless in a whole other way. I didn't realize that I could feel suffocated in open air. I didn't realize that I wouldn't see beauty in the leaves dancing in the wind. I didn't realize that I wouldn't feel at home in my body when the sun was kissing my skin. Life became sort of pointless. And it took about like 3 to 6 months for me to land. And what helped me was service. Was throwing myself into the hospital work. It's actually being bedside with someone who's going through the same exact experience that I was, being with the daughter of a patient who's actively dying. That has helped me to transform my relationship. And actually, this is the lesson that my mother's death is teaching me. It's I have so much empathy, and I have like this deeper capacity to just rest with discomfort in a way that I never thought possible. Because if you really think, there's awful things that happen, but death it's the end,
It's permanent.
It's permanent.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
To mirror your language back to you, thank you for naming the fact that there is nothing good about her death. There's no lesson, there's no me. And sure, you're taking lessons with the relationship with death after the fact, because now you know death, right? And my friend whose brother passed always tells me she's realized there's two kinds of people, those who know death and those who don't.
And I don't even like the language passing. I like death.
She is name dead. It. Yes.
She died.
And this is exactly what my best friend says too.
Because
she's like, let's
too
talk
easy
about
to
it.
say, oh, she passed away. It's passed away. Why do we have to make the most severe event in human life with so much levity? Say it what it is. Don't be afraid of it. She is dead. She died. It gives me comfort that now you can name that. It makes me like you more that you say your mother died. I'm so sorry your mother died. I'm so sorry that today is the day, and I'm choking up now. I'm so sorry that today is the day that marks 1 year that your mother is dead. That
is today the day.
No. It's December 25th. But receiving these text messages, receiving these phone calls, naming that without saying, oh, today is your mom's passing, or today is when she got her angel wings.
You're saying everything that my best friend says. You guys are speaking the same exact language, and it is simply because you are more in relationship with reality, and you have been forced to be. And it's not a place that I wish on anybody, but it is true relationship. Exactly. It is inevitable. It will touch us all. Death will touch us all. And I really appreciate your honesty around how much it sucks, how permanent it is, and how it just changes the way that you experience everything. The leaves don't sparkle anymore. And maybe they will one day again, maybe they won't.
Now they do. Now they do, and that's the beautiful thing of it. And I also want to name too the grief brain. I spent months with lack of short-term memory. I couldn't tell you what I had for breakfast at lunch, and I had to like fetch, And then I had spurts that I felt so confused by my mother being gone that I had these these spurts of derealization and depersonalization, which is like disassociation on crack. It actually makes you feel like reality isn't real.
Yeah.
And it makes total sense, right? When I have my Buddhist therapist, who's amazing clinician, actually able to remind me, this is normal. You're feeling this because the love was so deep. Good for you for having that kind of love. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So now I don't feel unsettled and unnerved when I'm experiencing a moment of depersonalization or derealization where I feel disconnected from my body, that I feel like reality isn't real. Are you real? Is this real? Like that. I don't feel as unsettled when this strikes my experience, because it's showing me that the depth of the love I had for my mom was enormous,
Yeah.
Which is rare. Which is rare to love deeply.
Yeah. this is reminding me of what you said earlier about what mental health really is. That mental health is not being okay. That's not the definition of mental health. Mental health is having a normal reaction to reality and what's happening. It's being happy when something happy happens, and it's being absolutely devastated to your core when something devastating happens. And it's the capacity to be with either and both at the same time. And it's just growing that capacity. And what I've seen in my best friend, what I've seen in other people I love who have known death to that deeply intimate extent, is that what that experience does is it expands your capacity to be with pain. Like you said, you've never known pain like that. You didn't think it was possible. And in expanding your ability to be with that pain, it also has expanded their ability to relate to people and have deep, meaningful relationships. And there's some sort of connection there in our ability and willingness to accept death and talk about it and be intimate with it and see it and watch it, even the way that you are literally guiding the dying in their last moments at their bedside. Your willingness to that also, I think, very much connects to this cultural issue of our fear of being intimate in relationships and the issues that we're having in our relationships.
We think we can live forever. You know, we think there's always a tomorrow. That's why we're like, I don't need to have the hard conversation today. I don't need to reach out to anybody. I don't need to compliment her shoes at the coffee shop. I don't need to say to that person next to me at yoga class, wow, that was such a beautiful practice. I don't need to do the hard thing, which is to say to somebody, hey, I really like you. Do you want to have coffee sometime? I don't need to do any of the things that are the actual needs for our well-being because I think I will live forever.
Yeah.
This fear of death is keeping you stuck. You know, you're so afraid that you may die and that you are not living. You know what I mean? That you're not living. So you kind of hold back, stay at home and stay closed, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like a counterproductive approach to life.
What was your mother's name?
Patricia.
Patricia.
Yeah.
That's another thing Nina taught me is to say their name. Name the dead.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. For my mom, my dad and I, we went on a grief walk. We walked 500 miles from France through Spain. We did El Camino de Santiago. And the video that I posted about it went viral, partially because I opened a door for people to experience their grief, and then partially because there's all these hyper politically correct people that felt the need to name the fact that I put stickers in areas that other people put stickers on the trail. And they felt the need to say, how awful is this? Your mother is dead, get over yourself, but don't put stickers on the trail. Things like that. And this is the funny thing, Olivia, and I'm glad I'm naming this to you and to the space and to the audience, is that for people who walked the trail and saw my mother's face on the trail over and over again at all the signs that we would put, and they saw all these other stickers too, because sticker is a form of communication on the trail as well. People started to be curious about it, and then when they realized that woman was a mother that died, and their son and her son and her husband were walking the trail, it opened a door for them to feel their grief. It opened the door for so many people at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, when we would catch up with people on the trail and they would see us put in the sticker, or they'd be like, why are you walking? Oh, it's a grief walk for us. It would then open the door for them to feel their grief. Yeah. It would open the door for them to touch the ungrieved grief that so many people are, you know, our society does not create opportunity for us to fall apart. Our society and our friends don't. This best self mindset that's so based in ableism, that's so based on all these, you know, awful things that we have to be good vibes only and happy all the time. And if you're not there, then you're not your best self. So therefore you can't be my friend. It's like there's so much that we have to unwind and unsocialize ourselves from our relationships, because we're robbing each other of living our full humanity, which parts of it are dark, parts of it are painful. We are trying our best and wanting everybody else to only have a season of summer. No spring, no fall, no winter ever. Only daytime, no nighttime. Forgetting that, like, grief is part of being human. Pain is part of being human. Rejection is part of being human. And if you're so afraid of rejection, you're going to be alone. And these are the areas that, like, hey, be grateful that rejection is part of your vocabulary and you're part of your inner world, because that shows that you have the courage to be fully human, to try, to engage, and be grateful that you had this deep love, that your heart's so deeply broken. Don't close your heart after the heartbreak. Mm-hmm. Stay open, stay active, engage with people,
Yeah. And utilize the experience of that deep pain that's going to be deeper than anything else you feel to help you go towards other uncomfortable experiences. Because as I'm talking, I'm realizing my best friend has been such a soul teacher to me through her process of owning and speaking about her grief. Thank goodness she has said these things out loud to me and taught me this. She has said that the experience of my brother dying was worse than anything I could have ever fathomed, and felt so bad that now when I have to have a hard conversation, it's nothing in comparison. Yeah. I can do it.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's why those who know such deep pain have such deep capacity for relationship, because they're willing to do the hard things that help relationship ultimately.
Mm-hmm. And you really get to see who are your people. Yeah. You really get to see who shows up, who actually took a plane ride to Los Angeles to be with me in my couch silently. Who actually took a plane ride to Los Angeles to be with me eating ice cream quiet or rewatching the same movie with me? Who was there? Who showed up? And then you start to see how many people are so scared of feeling, so afraid of entering this deep tunnel of pain with you. And it becomes you become more honest. You become more authentic. And I want to name this too, because it's something that I write about in the book. These concentric circles, these sort of Saturn rings that we have to look for in our lives. We have the cognitive ability of knowing about 150 people any given time. Faces, personality, names, kind of thing. 150 people, this big pod of people that that's the once in a lifetime event. These are the people that will come to a funeral, to a wedding, and then go a layer deeper. It's the 50. This is the big birthday bash. Your 40th, your 60th, your 90th birthday, perhaps, whatever. And that's the birthday that you call the friend who has the big backyard. Can I throw that party at your house? Yeah, and they're so excited to do it. That's the 50. Now, what we have to be looking for and actively working towards, and this is a huge foundation of the book, is a 15. And within the 15, there's the 5. The 5 is usually family and your partner. And perhaps if you have a deep relationship with your kids, they're in that 5 too. And this is my interpretation of this research called the Dunbar research as well. So we have to tend to the 5 and tend to the 15. And these are the people that will be there when mother dies, when brother dies, when the divorce happens, when the cancer diagnosis comes, when the horrible things happen, when all the inevitable things. I'm not saying that cancer is inevitable, but I'm saying all the inevitable, being sick, being hospitalized, loss, the inevitability of losing someone. Like, we need to be thinking right now. I don't know how old most people are and listening. I'm 37. I have to be actively thinking about who will be there when I am inevitably being sick or having to have a hip replacement, or all the things that we hear from the elderly population. We have to be thinking about these things, prioritizing that versus prioritizing accumulation. Prioritizing there instead of prioritizing your second home or another car or another drunk vacation or that. Like, who are the 15 people who got your back? Who's going to show up when you don't have a babysitter that night, but you have been dying to have a date night with your partner and your marriage is about to collapse, but you don't have anyone to call? Or you can't even afford a babysitter, and you can call your friend, say, please, can you come look over my daughter? They're like, I'm watching that movie right now, but okay, I'll be there in 20. If we don't have that in our lives, we have missed the plot. We have not prioritized what the human gig is about. Connection is the cure. We cannot go through grief, through pain, through loss, which are inevitable aspects of the human life, without community. I could have never made it out of this tunnel alive, because my tendency and my depersonalization and derealization that would come up, and the grief brain and all the awful things that would come up, I could have never seen it all with a wider perspective if it wasn't for my community, if it wasn't for my friends, if it wasn't for people showing up. I was talking to this big restaurateur. This guy has all these restaurants all over the world. On my podcast, Will Guidara, I believe that's his name. His restaurant was like #1 in the world for a little while. But point is, he was saying that he would call his friend every day at 9 o'clock for 3 months to support that friend's grief. He says, I'm going to call you every day for this amount of time. And you can pick up the phone some days, or you may not, or you may spend a whole week not picking up the phone. But if you pick up the phone, know that there is someone on the other side that won't try to fix you, that won't try to resolve, that won't try to say, your mother is an angel now. She's your ancestor. She's in a better place. At least she's not in pain. I won't say any of these awful things. I will just be a listening ear. And whatever you tell me in that phone call is between you and I. That. We're missing that. We have not prioritized that. We're prioritizing fickle relationships because this person has a lot of followers, because this person is doing the best self thing, because they look good, because they have something to offer me. We're not seeing each other. We're not seeing each other's value for what they really are. And we're not. This is the thing that the biggest lesson that I put into this book. And I said this to the founder, Sounds True, the other day when I was on her show. Why I feel this book, the wisdom is so much different than my second or first book, is because I wrote it from that depth of despair. So these words, these practices got me out of the hole that I was in. It was a dark hole. I thought I knew the hole of suicidal ideation, of disconnection. Nothing like seeing your mom in her funeral. Nothing like your dad saying, Sah, can you please go pick the clothes for her? That event. Yeah. That experience.
What a reframe you just gave us in terms of instead of the second home or the nice car or the drunk vacation, we forget that those things cost more than just money. Those things cost the time, the extra time at work that you put in to earn that money for that vacation, those 5 days of just being drunk. And that time could have been spent nurturing the depths of those 15 relationships and making your life way more fulfilling than that one vacation would. Mm-hmm. For me, this came up when I did my guest list at my wedding. And that was a big wake-up call for me because I said, how many of these people are really true deep connections to me? How many of these people really, really deeply know me and would come and will be there when my mother dies, right? And I realized then that I had to start putting a lot more time into my relationships. I realized I needed to learn how to be a better steward of relationship. And ever since then, I've been putting so much more energy and effort into especially my female friendships, and the returns have been greater than any investment I've ever made in my business.
Exactly. I moved out of New York because of that. Because my friends in New York City prioritize work, and granted, prioritize impact and beautiful, epic things everyone's doing.
There's seasons.
However, I moved to Los Angeles, and my friendships changed and deepened because people here, at least the people that I'm surrounded by, prioritize connection, prioritize playtime, prioritize walks, prioritize cooking, prioritize getting to know each other deeper, prioritize long phone calls while we're walking on the beach, like things like that, And look at the regrets of the dying. I wish I spent more time with the ones that I loved. I wish I said, I forgive you more, or please forgive me more. I wish I didn't work as much. I wish I prioritized the needs of my heart, not the insatiable capitalistic agenda of produce, never rest, never take it easy, never connect. There's a fine line there, but if you look around the space, we have gone way too far.
Dude, I'm like, how much of time are we wasting by trying to be well? Like in wellness, like how much of our damn day is spent doing the wellness habits when it doesn't even matter? I mean, it matters, but right, like whether you live 25 years, 50 or 75, you're wasting that time essentially trying to be as well as possible and extend your lifespan as much as possible and whatever, when you should just be filling those. What does it matter? When all that really matters on your deathbed is what you did with that time and who you loved and who you laughed with and the memories and the depth of your connection, because you can't take any of it with you. It's like.
And then what are people going to say in your funeral? My mother wasn't a quote unquote popular person, right? But guess what, Olivia? There's 200 people at her wedding. At her funeral. 200 people, and people after people. I was disassociating. I was dizzy. My ears were muffled.
Yeah.
I was literally hovering my body. My best friend, one of my closest friends, one of my best friends, flew from Miami to Brazil. He was just holding me in my arm and bringing me around to the people. And time after time, people had the sweetest things to say about my mom. Your mom was always there for me when I needed. Your mom knew how to love. I loved the way she loved her kids. I loved the way you guys loved your mom. That was so telling to how I want my funeral to be. Now I have an orientation. Now I have something to aspire to. Now I have a what I want my eulogy to sound like. We're not thinking about these things. We're never even contemplating the fact that, hey, maybe tomorrow. We're not prioritizing the need for connection. And the book's calling us back into connect. This is the cure. This is the gateway. Yes, meditate. Yes, eat clean. Yes, exercise. But how much time are you doing that and reinforcing that you're holier, you're better looking, you're skinnier, you're more well, you're more relaxed? And a lot of the times we have to observe, right? How much are your holy practice or your well-being practices creating more contrast in your life? If you spend all these hours at the gym to get this body that benefits you, but now are you going to be fat phobic? Think about that. You got to think about what happens in your inner dialogue. Are you meditating for 2 hours a day? Does that then shame other people who are not even meditating?
Is it creating more separation is really what you're getting at.
Boom. This is what it is. And to bring your point and with this point that I'm making together, it's like, are we coming together or are we becoming more separated? The truth is, you can meditate all these hours, but guess what? How many people have died of cancer or died in a car accident or died randomly overnight or whatever, and they were deep in their spiritual practice.
100%.
And guess what? How many people came to their funeral? Oh, there's 3 people there. They said she was really sweet. Thank you. And they walked away because there was nothing else to be said. That's not what you want from your life. Yeah. And people may look at you and look at me and be like, oh my God, you guys have these popular platforms. You probably have a lot of friends. How many people I have seen who have popularity and are deeply lonely? And I also want to name one thing. If you do just enough research, you may see that I have worked with some of the most famous people in the world. Guess what? Who's around them? Having been to their homes, having traveled with these people, their community who are not other famous people. It's people that they went to high school with, people that they went to college with. It's a cousin, it's a friend of their cousin that they grew up down the street from each other. That's who's around these extremely famous people. And that should show you that you wanting your best friends to all be in the best self journey is keeping you alone.
Yeah.
Your friends are probably already there. And your friends who are in the outer ring of the 50 or the 150, there's a couple people in there longing and begging and knocking at your door to get closer into the 15. But guess what? You're not seeing them because they're not in the best self world. They're not doing the healing thing. They're not going to a retreat. They're not, whatever it may be. Plug in your bias. Plug in your prejudice towards wellness, towards the holy, towards the good. See what you're missing. I have one of my closest friends who has nothing to do with the space. Nothing to do with the space. And does not even give a fuck about it.
Nope.
But guess what? They are living their best life. And I have had to learn the hard way to unsocialize myself from the idea that best self means what I'm doing. It's keeping me lonely. It's keeping me stuck, And I want a life rich of friends. Now I look at my phone. I'm saturated of connection. I'm overwhelmed by how much connection I have. That's crazy. That's a good problem to have. Yeah. I'd rather that be my problem than sitting at home and be like, oh my God, my need for connection is striking in my body and I have nothing to do. So let me go masturbate. Let me go overeat. Let me go smoke the cigarettes. Let me drink myself to sleep. Or let me go on a random app and see if I can get laid tonight. No.
Yep. No, that was me. That was me reaching for anything, cannabis, food, whatever. And now I call people all day. I reach for a phone call. I'm like, yep, who's on my roster today out of my 15, right? It's like, who am I going to call? Can I just check in with them for a second? Am I going to have an hour-long phone call while I'm doing a walk, while I'm doing a workout, whatever it is? And it's good to have the balance where it's not also avoiding yourself, of course.
Exactly.
But it's just like, can you reach out a little bit more each day? Can you just take a chance and maybe call someone that it might feel awkward to be on the phone with them, or you don't talk to them all that often, but they'd probably be really happy if you called them and said, hey, I just wanted to say hi. How's your day? You just never know. You got to put yourself out there. And like you said, there's people in the periphery that would love to be connected to you and that would feel really good to be connected to.
Make a list on your 15. Make a list of your 15 and your 5. And in the book, I explain how to look for your 15 and how to know who your 5 are. So do these exercises for you to really understand how to find them. And
I want to ask you 2 more things before we
please.
go. One is, what came out of your grief walk with your dad? And was that always the relationship that you guys had?
No, absolutely not. Those 32 days in that walking for 7 hours a day.
So it was a 500-mile grief walk specifically for grievers to walk.
No. It's a walk for everybody.
Okay.
You know, people walk. People do El Camino de Santiago for all kinds of reasons.
Okay.
People are seeking forgiveness. People are and the truth is, it's become so popular that a lot of people just walk it out of like, you know, I'm doing something cool. I'm doing some wellness exercise thing. But if you really look underneath the layers of it, the more psycho-spiritual approach to it is grief. And there is a grief tower, and there's like, I remember pulling up, and I can already feel my whole body changing its inner world. I remember walking up to the grief tower, and it's almost like I'd forgotten that my mother died from that morning of the walk until I saw the grief tower. And I just remember entering into this enormous, awful, bad mood where I hated my dad and I hated everybody. And then my dad wanted us to like celebrate mom and put our stickers there because everybody puts their stickers and they write the people's names or tie a ribbon around the grief tower. And then it wasn't until I said, Dad, I'm just gonna stay here. You keep going, keep walking. I laid on the grass and I just looked up at the sky. And I heard someone wailing, crying behind me. And they were sobbing because they lost their mom too. And that's when I had allowed myself to feel the weight that I was carrying that day. We went on a grief walk because I felt like the structure of my life in Los Angeles, even though I am feeling my feelings, even though I am a somatic practitioner, even though we are in this position of educating people in this space, I was so structured in my life that I wasn't allowing myself to fall apart. I needed unstructured time to fall apart.
Yeah.
I wish there were these farms or these centers around the world that people could just say, my mother died, my brother died. I need time off to just fall apart, to just wail and cry and sob and do nothing besides to experience the deep heartbreak. So anyways, going back to the what you asked, was your relationship with your dad always like that? No.
Yeah, how'd you get him to go on this walk?
Well, it was really about us walking for mom. It was like, let's memorialize her by going on this walk. But before that, my dad and I never spent this amount of time together. 32 days, 7 hours of walking a day. No. The point of contact in the family was always mom. Dad knew what was going on in my life because of mom. Dad was always like the sidekick. Mom was the queen, the center. Everything revolved around mom. So this was a big test. This was a huge test to see, to understand that my dad has always loved me. Although he's only said I love you to me maybe 3 or 4 times in his life. But he loved me in the mornings that I was grumpy. In the mornings that I meditated, that I did the holy thing, that I meditated, I did my somatic practice, I ate my clean breakfast, and he was sparkly and vibrant and alive and cheery. And I was still, after having done all the things, I was still in a bad mood. He could still be kind to me. He'd still be sweet to me, still be patient with me. And I would be even mad at him for relating to me in a kind way. I wanted the law of proximity to work. I wanted to be unsettled, and I want him to be unsettled too.
Misery and company.
Exactly. And it wouldn't happen, Olivia. He would just be like, okay, cool. You need your time? I'm going to walk a little bit ahead of you, do your thing, and I'll find you. And then when I would find him, he would then show me, oh, look where I put mom's photo. Oh, look at this thing. Or he took photos of these flowers and things. It was like these points of contact that just brought us closer and closer and closer. And I really understood this love language concept in a whole new way. With my father, he loved me. He loves me in a whole different way than my mom did. And that's beautiful that I've had these two people showing me love in a whole different way. And I recommend the walk for grievers. I recommend you walking with your grief. El Camino de Santiago is amazing. Highly recommended. Take the time away if you can to spend a month walking. You can do it alone. It's a very safe trail. Or you can do it with a family member or a friend,
Yeah. It sort of feels like you almost did your own family constellation by doing that, because you were reinstating kind of like the hierarchy in the family. And now that mom, the matriarch, was gone, then your father stepped into his role of patriarch, and he became your point of contact. He became your North Star in the family.
Wow.
And
Thanks for naming that.
Yeah, by spending that time together, I'm such a big fan of family constellation work and therapy.
Yeah.
Even if your loved ones have died, even just kind of imagining that they're there and speaking to them can be so healing. I've done that work recently. And yeah, so that's beautiful. And then the other question I just wanted to ask is your work as a hospital chaplain. What is your biggest takeaway from that? And what does that work look like? The why, and where are you going to go with that?
Where am I going to go with that? People have been asking this from day one. I don't know. I have no idea. I just really feel so present in that space.
So you're sitting next to people who are dying in a hospital.
Not only these patients. That's not the only population I serve. It's people who are in an oncology journey, people who are there for surgeries, people who are there for an infection or whatever. It varies. A to Z, really. But lately, I've been called more and more into the end of life, which it really showed me the depth of my capacity. And then I even had a doctor from the supportive care medicine team shadow me for a couple of hours. She's only supposed to shadow me for 1 hour, but she shadowed me for 2 hours because she was so intrigued by my approach to caring for people. So where am I going? I have no idea. I think there is a book about grief in me. I think there's a book about heartbreak and that, definitely. But I'm not sure. I think I'm learning so much about the human condition and about the inevitable pain of being human. And I'm also feeling so grateful that I wrote this book about the need for connection, the need for friendship, because when you look at hospitalization and how often people go through that alone, when my mother was going through her cancer journey, me, my brother, and my sister would all fly from wherever we were every week. And of course, we were in a privileged position to be able to do that. But there are ways that you can create the cause and condition for you to be there every Tuesday when your mother has chemotherapy. I would see in other rooms how many people were just sitting there with their big 7-Up cup of soda, watching TV alone, receiving chemotherapy. Like, these are not experiences that anyone should go through it alone, So the work in the hospital has really exacerbated that. It's like, wow, if I can be a friend to someone going through this, if I can be here next to someone who doesn't have a friend, who actually doesn't have a friend, if I could be that friend for them,
And you being there didn't change your mom's outcome, but it changed her relationship to the experience, and that's what matters.
Exactly. She lived fully those last 4 years. She lived deeply. She laughed. We danced, Like, some of my first viral videos is me and my mom dancing, Like, I was able to come onto the Deepak Chopra world because of videos of me and my mom dancing, So beautiful things have come out of that deep, vulnerable space of me showcasing my mother without hair and without breasts, And I just want to name one more thing too about the hospital work. It's training me to dissolve my desperate need to fix someone's experience because I'm uncomfortable. We've already talked about that earlier today, but I just wanted to say that again. Like, when we realize that our presence has a power, that when we are deeply present, our presence has a quality of warmth, and everything that faces warmth, everything that's under warmth, what happened? Changes. When you put a little bit of warmth in a compost pile, it becomes the greatest fertilizer. That I've learned to be the cookie. My one of my supervisors, Rabbi Sarah Baruch at the hospital, I would always bring something from my house. from having so many brands and so many different things. I have like a whole closet full of shit. So I would always bring all these things, like, can I just give this to this patient? She's like, no, you're not allowed to give anything. And I was like, well, what do you mean? I can't give any of these? She's like, no, you have to be the cookie. Be the cookie, be the blessing. And I was like, okay, I'm understanding this now. So it's training me in an entire new way of non-verbally, non-action way of offering a blessing, of experience, of helping someone process their inner world just by being a loving witness, just by being a loving awareness, and seeing that anything that is met with a loving awareness, with the warmth of your presence, will change. It doesn't mean we change for the better, but change will happen, which then helps us to widen our perspective, which helps us to see pain through a different perspective, which is the goal, the gig,
You're simply holding space, and you are expanding your capacity to hold that space and witness while not being able to do anything about it. With your work as a hospital chaplain, you are putting yourself in situations where there is quite literally nothing you can do. And by having nothing that you can do except for just be with and witness and offer warmth and presence, you are expanding your capacity to be with the discomfort, to be with the things you cannot change, to be with someone who is crying, to be with someone who's laughing, whatever it is, you're expanding your capacity. And my main takeaway from this episode is that being a good steward of relationships is to just expand your capacity to hear that person out, to hear their grievances, to hear their discomforts, to be with the really difficult moments of honesty, to be with the conflict, to be with their happiness. Expand your capacity for that relationship in every way, and you will have a good relationship. And if you can expand your capacity to be with pain and the hard things in life, you will automatically expand your capacity for a relationship.
Beautiful. Amen. Wow.
Sah, you were channeling so many times in this conversation.
Oh,
just so beautiful.
Thank you. You too.
Thank
we
you
brought it out from each other.
Yeah. Thank you for everything you've shared today. Please tell us where we can find your book and your work.
Thank you. The book you can get everywhere books are sold. Ideally, I hate to be that girl, but ideally you get it on Amazon, because the publisher loves those Amazon reviews. In order for you to give an Amazon review, you have to buy it on Amazon. So ideally, if you are someone who's like, I don't do Amazon, get it anywhere books are sold, right? But ideally, Spiritually We on Amazon, and write a review. That's so important for the success of the book. And then you can come join us in our community on the Somatic Activated Healing membership. Find everything in my Instagram.
Yeah,
all the details
I'll put all
there.
the links in the show notes for sure.
But the book's the most important thing.
Yeah.
We need communities to cure and all the amazing things that in life. It's like we need each other.
Start a book club with your friends and read it together and reflect together and think of ways based on the tips in the book that you can, co-regulate and support one another.
That part.
Beautiful. Wasn't that great?